everyone! I am just adjusting my lighting here and making sure everything is fine. Let me see if I can get this a bit brighter. There we go. Can everyone see me all right? Hey everyone! So I'm just giving it a few minutes for everyone to pop on here. I have all of my supplies that I'll be working with on my desk, and I'm very excited to share this live with you guys. I'm wondering, can anyone tell me, first of all, can anyone comment and let me know if you can see my video and my hands? I'm seeing hearts, so maybe that's a good sign. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Hi, Nolana. So nice to see you on here. And if anyone can tell me if my screen looks really, like, is this bright enough? Because on my screen, it's showing up as kind of dark. Yeah, it's kind of dark. Okay, let me see. Oh, okay, so I can turn on the light, but then there's like this weird reflection. That's all right. I won't have this stamp set on video all the time. It's weird because when I usually do my videos, it automatically corrects the lighting to make it brighter. So it's really weird to me that this is this dark, but hopefully, let me see if I do the light here. Is that any better? I think this will create a weird shadow, so I think I'll go back to the lighting here. Okay. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me today. Hi, everyone. Just wanted to give you a heads up that, as usual for our lives here on the Citrus Twist Facebook group, we are entering all of our comments to win a prize, and usually it's a $15 gift certificate, but since we're going to be talking all about stamping today, Trina has decided to give away a free stamp set valued at $28.50 to a random person drawn from the comments. So that's super generous of Trina. I'm so excited to be sharing that. So make sure you leave some comments for me, and Trina will be collecting all of them and drawing a winner by the end of this live. And that's the value of one of their 6x8 stamp sets, which this one is. I'm sure if you wanted to pick a cheaper stamp set, Trina would probably allow that too, but yeah, any questions about that? Is everyone excited to dive into some stamping? So the stamp set that I'm going to be using today is this Vintage Love stamp set from Citrus Twist. This was just released last month. And yes, the stamp set is absolutely gorgeous. I love anything with florals and anything with layering. And yes, Trina says you can choose whatever stamp set you would like. And just a heads up that these, some of the stamp sets that have a bit of layering involved come with a layering guide. So this comes as part of the package, and you can see some ideas here for how to do the stamping, but I'll be going more into detail about that later on. Let's just take this out so that we have that to look at. And the color palette and the collection that I'm going to be working with today is the color palette for this retro mini kit that just came out this month. So I love the colors in here. There's lots of oranges and purples and yellows that are perfect for that kind of in-between fall and summer mode that I have going on here in Canada. Of course, it does get a bit colder here in Canada quicker than in the States. And I know we have some viewers joining in from Australia and other countries too, but I think this is very versatile color palette. So I wanted to create embellishments for this color palette that were floral based from the stamp set here. And the reason why is because a lot of the kits from Citrus Twist come with lots of florals, and we got this sheet of puffy stickers that came with, I think, 4 of these flowers, and I've already used 3 of them up. So you can see that I'm a huge fan of florals, and I thought it would be perfect to showcase how to use this stamp set to create embellishments that will match whatever color palette you're using. So you could be using this color palette, or you could be using one of the other Citrus Twist kits, and they would work just as well. So I'll put these to the side. Any questions about the giveaway and the stamp set that we're using? Thanks, Natalie, for sharing those links for us. So the first thing that I usually do when I'm looking at collections and doing some stamping is to choose out the inks that I'm going to be using for my stamping. So I have all of my inks swatched out, which makes it really easy for me to find what inks to use. The inks that I primarily use are Altenew inks, and these are a dye ink, as well as Distress Oxide inks, which are kind of like a hybrid ink. And I'll talk more about the differences between these two and what I recommend for layered stamping specifically. I like to go with the dye inks because dye inks are kind of translucent, and so when you're doing any sort of layering where you're stamping one image over another, I find the translucent inks work a lot better in terms of being able to see kind of like the color underneath not really show up through that top layer, but it just kind of layers a bit better, similar to how you have watercolors, and if you paint over one color with another color, then you kind of are able to see a glimpse of that bottom layer through the top layer. So that's why I like to use dye inks as opposed to pigment inks or hybrid inks like the Distress Oxides. So for this video, we'll be using the Altenew dye inks. And specifically, I also like to use these because they have custom palettes built in for, yes, that's right. As Natalie said, they don't have the same sort of pigment that makes the Distress Oxides opaque looking. So Distress Oxides, I love them in terms of being able to blend on papers. They're a dream to work with that way. And usually I like to use them in stamping, but just in terms of the layered stamps that we'll be talking about today, I do prefer the dye inks a bit more. So Altenew has sets of 4 ink pads that come in like mini kits. So you can get 4 of these ink pads in a set, and they're designed to work together in terms of layered stamping because Altenew is another company that produces layered stamps. So you'll see that I have all of my sets of 4 inks swatched out, and I have what the inks look like layered together at the very bottom. And that just allows me to, at a quick glance, look at what types of colors will work well with my papers. So for the papers that I'm working with today, these again are from the Retro Kit, and these are the digital TN pattern papers. I decided to go with this Martian terrain color scheme, so these 4 colors here, just because I thought that the oranges and the reds really matched that autumn vibe very well. I've also picked out, let me see, I've also picked out the Summer Afternoon set as well. That's these 4 colors here, and these ones I think also go with that autumn vibe that I have going on in these papers. For the greens, I thought this green set worked really well, so we'll be using these 3 colors. And then for the blues, I have this Northern Shore palette, and those are those 4 colors there. And then last but not least, we have some purples that I picked out, which are these 4 purples here. So if you do look into Altenew, they have regular ink pads that they sell individually, but I like buying the mini ink cubes in sets of 4s because it's just a lot more convenient for me when I'm layering the stamps. And I'll talk a bit about like what do you do if you don't have all 4 colors a bit later as well. Oh, any questions about the picking of the colors? No questions so far. So you'll see that I can easily pull these out and I can kind of lie them on my papers and see how they look on top of those pattern papers. And I really like this color combination with these papers. So I've pulled out all of my inks and let's get stamping. So when you look at this stamp set, I'll need a white piece of paper as well. You'll notice that the floral comes in 4 different steps. So I always like to start with the largest, most solid image first, followed by what would be kind of like the second most solid image, and then followed by the detailed images, and then that 4th step is that centerpiece here. So in terms of the color palette that we chose, here I've stamped them out in the 4 colors, and then I've stamped out the leaves as well. And then similarly with the leaves, I like to start with the solid one first, then the slightly more detailed one, then the last one would be the most detailed outline one there. So the thing with stamping is, especially with these solid images that Natalie's mentioning about, you want to make sure to prime your stamps before you use them to get the cleanest impression. I'll just put these off to one side for now. And what I mean by that is you'll see here an image that I've stamped out after I've primed it, and this is before I primed it. So if you look really closely, you'll see that this is very spotty and almost like granular looking, whereas after I've primed it, it looks a lot more solid. So the way that you prime the stamps, I'm going to show you on this rectangular one that I haven't primed yet. Stamping block. So if we just pick one of the colors, let's say this burnt red here, and I try to stamp this. So I'm inking up my stamp, getting some nice pressure there, and you'll see as I'm not, like when I stop inking it, you'll see that it's kind of granular in color. And when I stamp it down on some paper, it looks really splotchy. So this is before priming the stamp. And this isn't anything to do with like the quality of the stamp. I haven't met a stamp set, a clear stamp set that I've been able to use without priming it. So the way you prime it is, you'll see that I just wiped off the ink using a white cloth, microfiber cloth preferably. And I have here a Tombow Mono sanding eraser. Now this is designed to get rid of, like let's say if I dropped my ink pad or I like accidentally touched it there. This is designed that if you don't have too much ink, you can sometimes sand it off because this is just like a very fine grit sanding eraser. But I like to just take this and run it over the surface of the stamp. So you'll kind of see, I don't know if you can see that very well, but you'll kind of see that this section here that I've sanded has turned a bit kind of cloudy and translucent, and then this part is still quite glossy and clear. So you want to just make sure that the entire surface of the stamp has kind of that frosted finish on it. And this is just to get rid of that coating, I think that comes in the manufacturing process that makes the inks kind of bead up like that. This is the Tombow Mono sanding eraser. Unfortunately, it's not something that Citrus Twist carries, but I do think it's essential for stamping and making sure that you have a clean impression. And yes, I do this for all of my stamps. The only exception is sometimes I'm able to get away with, like for example, if you look at the stamp set, the word vintage has kind of that distressed look about it. So in that case, I don't really mind as much if it turns out blotchy. But even with like the fine detail stamps, I find that if you don't prime them, they just don't stamp as clear and you don't get a really crisp impression. So now I'm just taking this wet cloth and wiping off some of that sanding eraser files and just making sure that it's nice and dry before I use it. And sometimes I just like blot off the water on my hand. So now, same thing, I'm going to ink this, and you'll see as I'm inking this that it's holding the ink a lot better. This is a sanding eraser, like S-A-N-D-I-N-G. Maybe I can write it. Tombow Mono Sanding Eraser. I'll put that there. So you'll see that it's no longer being blotchy, right? Like it's quite smooth. So if you stamp this down, stamp, you get a much clearer of an impression. Any questions about that? No questions so far, I don't think. Maybe Trina will consider carrying these in the shop because I feel like they're essentials. Yeah, so then I just wipe my stamp clean and it's ready to go for next time. Put that back on my sheet. And yes, it does make such a huge difference. There is another way to prime your stamp without using the sanding eraser. Sometimes people use like a different, sorry. I just realized I've been saying Trina and it's Erin who's doing the moderating. So I'm so sorry, Erin. Oh, okay. Yes, so there is a way to prime the stamps without using a sanding eraser, and that's some people just rub the stamps on like jeans or like another rough surface, and sometimes that works. And then other people find if you stamp with like an archival ink, which is an oil-based ink that doesn't beat up on the surface, you can stamp with that first, and then that kind of primes the stamps. But I find this way to be kind of like the cleanest and the fastest way. So that's why I use that. Any other questions about? Nope. All right, let's move on to doing some layering then. So I just have some scrap strips of paper here because I like to do my stamping if I'm making embellishments. I like to do my stamping on a separate piece of paper and then cut them out and then stick them on my layouts. So that's just my preference, but of course you're welcome to do this on your layouts as well if you feel like if you feel adventurous enough. So with the layered stamping, you'll see that I have the 1, 2, 3, 4 images here. Again, going from, I have hair everywhere as well. I shed like a dog, so I apologize for any hair that gets into the video. So we have the image 1, 2, 3, and 4, 4 being that like tiny center part here. So I like to start with the base, what I call the base image first, which is the one that's most solid, and I like to start with the lightest color in my set of 4. So, oh, this is looking a bit, there we go. And yeah, like Natalie said, smooth cardstock absolutely makes a big difference as well. With these, okay, that is weird that these are, maybe I'll give it a wipe and see, maybe I have some oils on it because I'm not sure why it's showing up blotchy today. It showed up just fine yesterday. Okay, let's try that again. So just inking up my stamp, stamping it down. In this case, when I'm doing stamp layering, especially when I'm not familiar with the stamps as much, I like to orientate the stamped image so that they're kind of like the same orientation they are on the stamp set, as well as on the image guide, so that it's a lot easier for me to compare directly and see where I'm lining up the images. So you'll see on this stamp here, you have kind of like more sharper bumps here, more sharper bumps here, and kind of like puffy round bumps on this side. And I'm going to keep that oriented the same way throughout this video so that it's just a bit easier for me to do my layering. So next up, I'm taking that step 2 stamp. I'm doing my second darkest ink here. And I'm inking this up. And with this one, I'm going to do my alignment. You'll see in this image here that there are a few places where this is lining up, right? This is lining up. I'm talking about the second lightest image. So this one here with the kind of the darker pink. So it's lining up kind of here and here, as well as here. So I'm going to look for those reference points when I'm stamping this down. So lining it up on the side here, trying to look at this. The glare on my stamping block is not helping in this situation. Yeah, you'll see that I totally messed it up. Usually I don't have this light here, so it's a bit easier to see. Let's try on this one here to line this up. So this point here is lining up with that point, and then I have those 3 bubbles lined up there. There, that's a bit better. And when you're lining up these stamps, the great thing about these layering stamp sets is that they don't have to be perfect to look pretty, because you kind of get that watercolor effect. And if you stamp it kind of off center, it'll still look nice. You'll see in some of my examples later on that some of them are not perfectly lined up, and that's perfectly fine with me. So third color here being the third darkest. This one, again, we're looking for the little bumps. So this one is going to be that third color, that's the darker pink, going here and going there. So again, we're lining up the bumps here, like so. And it kind of looks strange before you finish building it, but once you're done building it, it looks amazing. These stamp sets. Like so. And in between, I'm just wiping this off on a damp cloth. And last but not least, we have our tiny little stamp, which is the very center. And I'm just going to stamp that quickly. And that just kind of goes in this area here. You'll see it outlined in the center of this darker part here. So that's just that part there. So we'll stamp. You'll notice as well about these dye inks, and Altenew isn't the only company that makes inks that have these properties. I think Hero Arts and Catherine Pooler have inks like this as well, where if you stamp it down, it'll kind of take a while to even out and absorb into the paper. So when you first stamp it initially, it will appear a bit like darker in color, but you'll see over time that it kind of evens out to give you like a more even impression if you just leave it for a few minutes. So there we have our 2 flowers stamped. Now, one question that I get quite often with the layering stamps is what happens if I don't have 4 of one color? So for example, if you have just 2 purples instead. So this is what it would look like with the original 4 colors, but I'm going to show how you would get a similar effect with just 2 inks. So preferably you still want to have one lighter color and one darker color in the same family. And I'm going to start by inking this up. So that's step 1. Now, moving on to step 2, I'm actually going to use this same ink, but I'm going to try to stamp it twice. And this will be a lot easier if you have a stamp positioning tool, and I'll share what that looks like in a second when I'm doing that. But for now, let's just try to stamp it without that and see what happens. So we have, where are my little bumps? Like that. And you'll see that even though this is the same ink color as that bottom ink, it's already showing up as a bit darker because wherever you've stamped that twice, it will appear darker. So let's try to get it lined up the best you can. And there we go. So you'll see as this evens out that even though this is the same ink color that I did for that first image as well as that second image, the second image will still dry a lot darker than that first image did. Next we're moving on to step 3 of that one, and this is where I'm going to pull out that second, so in terms of that ombre of ink colors, this is the 3rd one in that set, but we're just pretending that I only have 2 of them. So just inking up this step 3 stamp, trying to line this up. There we go. And then step 4, I'm going to attempt to stamp twice in this medium kind of darker color. So once there, you'll see that that's the same color. And let's see if it turns out any darker if I stamp it a second time. Yeah. So it doesn't give as much of a difference in terms of contrast as it would if you had 4 colors, obviously, but you can still see there's some layering going on there. So if you don't have 4 ink colors, but you only have 2, you can totally still use these stamps. Any questions about lining up the stamped images and choosing colors? So you'll see as well that this one I didn't stamp 100% perfectly. Neither did I stamp, like all 3 of those are kind of like stamped a bit wonky, but they all still look really great to me and I would still use these on a project. Let's move on to the leaves now. So there's 3 steps for the leaves. And yeah, definitely a lot of people are saying like practice makes perfect. So if you play around with these stamps, like I will for sure still use these ones even if they're not perfect. You can always hide, like if you have mistakes, you can hide the mistakes underneath too, right? So like if I had like a leaf, I haven't stamped a leaf. Wait, yes I have. So if I have a leaf, for example, and I didn't like this part that I stamped, I can just put that leaf over there or put some other type of embellishment there, and that would be perfectly fine. So I've stamped this leaf out here, in the lightest green I have. And then next I'm going to do the step 2 one, which is this medium tone here. And in terms of like where this lines up, I think just anywhere in the center looks fine. I've tried a few different positions, but ultimately I just want this base part to be kind of around there. So I'm just stamping here, like so. And then finally we have that outline that I'm going to stamp in the darkest green. And that just kind of goes around that bottom edge of the leaf. And you can see I completely missed, like, compared to that one. But it still looks great, in my opinion. And after that's done, then you would maybe fussy cut these out and use them on a page. But I'm going to share a quick trick for how to make a lot of these if you have not a lot of time. So I made these last night and it didn't take me too long. And I'm going to share a quick trick on how to do that. So first of all, you want to have your image stamped out. And this is if you have an electronic cutting machine. So something like a Cricut or so MB is asking, have I used watermark or a watermark ink to darken when layering? You could totally do that. I haven't tried that myself. I find the watermark ink tends to, like if you darken on a piece of pattern paper or a piece of like colored cardstock, because that cardstock base is colored, I find it darkens a lot easier than if I stamp on a stamped image, because this isn't like, it isn't dyeing through the entire card base, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? I'm sorry if that, like, that's just in my head why I feel like it wouldn't work as well, but you can definitely try it and let us know how it works. I will be using watermark inks, the Versamark ink, later on in this video, so we'll have a look there as well. But yes, if you have an electronic die cutting machine, this is a quick trick to help you stamp lots of images at a time. So here I've stamped out the base image, that's image 1, and I've stamped it out 4 times. And the reason why I've stamped it out 4 times is because there are 4 steps to this image. And I've also gone ahead and stamped out the leaves 3 times because there are 3 steps in that layered image. And I've purposely stamped this out on a darker ink on a white piece of cardstock because the idea is to run this through your electronic cutting machine using the scan function, and that way you can cut out these images using your electronic scanning machine. So something like a silhouette cutting machine. I have a Brother Scan and Cut. Cricut, I think, has the same function as well, where you can stamp images, you can scan them into your electronic cutting machine, and it traces an outline around that image. And then I usually use the 0.04 inch border. I've written that down as well. 0.04 inch border. It gives a really nice border around your images, like so. And everyone has a different preference. Some people prefer like a larger border, but I find the 0.04 inch border works really great. And then what I did was I ran these both through my cutting machine, and I cut out all 4 images of the flower and all 3 images of the leaf. And so you end up with these templates here. So we have, and I label this as well with like what this is, so that if I find this in my crafting pile, I'm not just like, hey, what types of scrap pieces of paper are these? Jillian, I'm not really sure what other alternatives there are. I think you have to have a cutting machine to do this because you have to have some way of cutting out your images, unless Erin or Natalie want to make cut files for these. Obviously that would take time, and so we would have to get back to you on that. But if they make cut files, that would be excellent if you guys are still there, Erin and Natalie. But ultimately, yeah, you have to have a cutting machine that will scan in order to do this. Or you have to have some sort of cut file that coordinates with the stamps, or you have to have a die, so like a metal die that cut these out. So what I have accessible are the electronic cutting machines that scan, and my brother's scan and cut software does that. Yeah, metal dies are great with stamp sets, but not all companies come out with metal dies, right? So Citrus Twist so far hasn't been producing any metal dies, but I found that this is a great workaround if you do happen to have a cutting machine that can scan in images. So I've cut them out. These solid images I can just throw out because I'm not going to need them anymore. And I've also taken that same cut file and cut out lots of blanks. So these I just save in, like if I have a pack of embellishments and I'm done using them, I save these little plastic sleeves so that I can store other bits and pieces. So you can see that these all fit right in there because I used that same cut file to cut these out. And then I've also cut out some leaves as well. If we have time, we can play around with those. And this is where your stamp platform comes in handy. So this specific one is from Tim Holtz, and unfortunately it's retired. They've stopped making it, but there are other types of stamp platforms out there. One is the Misty. I think it's very expensive, so that's why I didn't get that one. But what I'm going to do is use these templates with the stamp platform to make my life a lot easier when I'm trying to line up the images and stamp down multiple images. So I have my template. I'm going to use some low tack tape. You can use washi tape or something else that's low tack. And I'm just going to flip it to the back side and apply a strip right across those openings so that when I pop my pieces in there later on, they'll stay put. Oopsies, not sticking to the mat. So maybe I'll just trim these off quickly so that they don't get in the way. Like so. And then if you like, you can feel free to tape this down too if you want, but I'm just going to leave it loose for now. So now I'm going to place one of these shapes right into this spot there. And let's do a couple of the blue flowers here. So I have my blue inks. I'm going to start with this lightest one. And I'm just going to look at this shape and kind of line it up with this stamp so that it has an even border all the way around. And so I'm just going to sit down so that I can kind of shift this around a bit. And you want to make sure that your template is pushed into this corner as well, and that's how everything will line up. So we're just going to pick that up. It's going to try to take our piece of paper with it as well. And now when I use this ink, it should stamp right in the center of that blank that I've cut out, like so. So now I can shift this down and put another one in there. And this will stamp in exactly that same position. So now I'm going to move on to step 2 and set this up. So I have my, oops, that's my step 3 stamp. I have my step 2 stamp here. and I'm going to line it up. Again, I'm sitting down for this, so I apologize if you guys are commenting and I can't see your comments. I also apologize if my head is in the way right now. Where is this supposed to line up? And sometimes I have to cheat and use my little cheat sheet here. I think have I just been lining this up in the wrong way? Okay, oopsies. So we have that stamp there. Going to pick it up. And then this is, yes, this is my second ink. I'm going to ink up this second stamp with my second ink color and my first stamp with my first ink color. Stamp it down, give it a press. And you can see that I have this kind of assembly line going, right? So I like to work counterclockwise. You can for sure do whatever way works best for you. But I've just popped that into the number 3 spot here, and you can label them as well. Like you can do 1, oopsies, 2, let's get a pen that works. 2, 3, 4. We'll take our number 3 stamp, line that up. I'm going to pick that one up as well. And then move on to our third ink. Ink that up. That one is my first ink color. This one is my second ink color. And then now when I stamp everything down, I get step 1, 2, and 3. Like so. And so on and so forth. Just gonna pop this one in there. Scooch this one over. Scooch this one down. And then pop a new one in here. Oops. And then now we're on to the fourth one. And sometimes I feel like if your stamp is too small, it kind of sticks to your finger when you try to move it. So I like to have my little pick tool here, just so that I can kind of more or less position it where I want it to. I find that this middle piece here is the one that matters the least if you stamp it down correctly, because it doesn't like really need to line up exactly, but just for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna have that in there so that you can see what it looks like with all 4 steps. So now I have 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll start with number 1 first so that I don't get confused. Then number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Stamp that all down. And there you have it. So, obviously you can go and do this all day and you'll end up with lots and lots of flowers, but you can see how easy it is, as opposed to lining up each one of those images, especially like in my case, because I can't really see, where my things are being lined up. And then if you want to change out colors, then you can just wipe this all down and then start with a different color. So any questions about this technique here? Okay. So my next tip is instead of using inks to do the stamping, we're going to try to emboss on one of the steps. So let's say I want to emboss on, which one would look nice embossed? I think I'm going to try to emboss on step 3. So let's clear all the blue guys first, because I want to do the purple with gold embossing. I think will look really nice. So the way I like to rotate colors is, like, this one is going to need a purple color. So I'm just going to wipe off this one here. And then pick out my light purple. Make sure that's dry. There we go. Stamp that down. So that one's done. This one comes up. And this is very therapeutic to do this as well. Like, you can sit here and just stamp and chat with friends if you have like friends who you Zoom with. I just sat and chatted with my boyfriend for a while last evening while I was doing that, and I really liked that. So now this one needs to change color, and I accidentally wiped that. You didn't have to, but just make sure you wipe that down. So now we have, that is gone. This one comes here. This one goes there. That one goes there. Stamp that down. That one's done. Now with the embossing, the only thing I'm concerned about is it getting on the tape, if any of the tape is going to be exposed, or if any of my images are still wet. So what I'm going to do is just get my embossing powder. I do use an embossing buddy. This is just a sack of like powder, and just run that across just in case there's any like oils or anything that will cling on to the embossing powder. And before I stamp down with my Versamark ink, I'm just going to pour some embossing powder over this to see if there's anywhere where it sticks. So you can see here that it's sticking to those areas that are still wet that I had just stamped. So I'm going to knock that off, brush this all off, and that just means that we need to give it a bit more time before we do this next step. So I'm going to maybe take my heat gun, just kind of dry that off a bit. I don't want to dry it off. I don't want to heat it up too much because I don't know what it will do to the tape behind it. I don't want it to stay permanently there. Let's see if that will work a bit better. Still a bit wet there. So, but maybe we'll try and see how this goes. This might end up disastrously, by the way. But yes, we'll see. So I'm going to wipe off this step 3 stamp and use Versamark there instead. So we have, let's see, what do I have now? This is still blue. That is going to get Versamark. This goes here. This one goes here. Let's get some Versamark on here. Stamp that down. So yeah, Jillian, I'm not seeing that there's a huge difference in terms of like the colors there where I've stamped that Versamark ink down. So I don't think you can use that to darken the areas, unfortunately. but you can do some embossing, and that would be fun. Okay, so it looks like the bottom layer has mostly dried, and now I only have embossing powder where I want it. Yay! Gonna make sure this is nice and heated up before I put this down to my paper. And to prevent any warping, I'm just kind of quickly going over the area, going over the back a bit. And there we go. So you can see in some areas where the embossing powder kind of has stucken down to the wet ink underneath it, but I think this is really cool. I really like that. I need to heat this up a bit more on the very bottom. Yeah. So you just want to heat it until all the powder has gone away, like all the sandy bits have gone away, and you have kind of like a smooth gold finish to it. And once that's cooled to the touch, you can then move on to the next step. So again, I'm wondering about whether that's dry enough for embossing, but we'll see how it goes. So that's gone. We have our step 4 ink, which one is darker? This one's darker. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the embossing part? I know I kind of went through that a bit faster than I've gone through the rest of the video. Oops, and I forgot to put, oh dear, I forgot to put a blank in there. So that one didn't get stamped, but I kind of like that this one's still stamped in there, but I think I would use the 3rd darkest purple next time. So let's try that after I finish heat embossing this guy. What is the bag that you use to rub? So that's an anti-static powder tool. It's just a bag of you can use, even if you want to use a pantyhose full of baby powder, it's pretty much just to remove any excess oils or any sticky residue that might have gotten on the surface from touching it with my fingers, for example, so that you get a bit of a cleaner embossed image. And I think this one turned out a lot better than this second one. Probably because as I'm using this heat tool, it's drying this one off as well. But you can see the difference there. Before I move on, I should probably just stamp. Where are all my blanks? Oh, here. I'm getting too excited with this embossing and I'm forgetting the stamping. Yes, let's just quickly stamp that one before we move on. There we go. So if you look up on wherever you shop for anti-static powder tool or embossing buddy, anything like that, yeah, baby powder or cornstarch would work great. Yeah. Natalie also does some incredible stamping as well. She's actually part of, she works with Altenew products as well, and she has lots of experience with stamping, more so than me. So let's try that tiny bit of a lighter purple on that 3rd stamp this time. Give that a quick swipe of my Versamark ink there. Stamp that down. Yeah, I think I like the lighter purple in there better. And then more embossing powder here. And then heat set it. So I think that's all I wanted to show you guys for this video. Does anyone have any other questions? I know we didn't get to making a layout, but I thought with between the stamping and the embossing that it would probably take up too much time and I wouldn't have enough time for demoing a layout, but then I can add this to my pile, and I'll for sure be making a layout at some point in time, and I'll make sure to share the results on the Citrus Twist Facebook page as well as on Instagram. And I think before we leave, I think Trina was, sorry, Erin. Erin was going to draw a giveaway winner. If we don't have any other questions. Yes, and just a reminder as well that all of the lives are available on Facebook through the Citrus Twist Kits Facebook page. So make sure to check out the rest of the lives if you enjoyed this one as well. And make sure to check out my YouTube channel if you want more stamping inspiration, because I do share quite a bit of stamping on my YouTube video as well. YouTube videos, although I don't go live nearly as often. You can see that I get like flustered really easily with the live videos. So yeah, I don't go live all that much, but I'm so happy that you guys were able to join me, and I hope you had fun. I hope you learned lots of tips and tricks. I hope you're able to do some stamping and come up with some embellishments. Yes, and I'll just quickly finish these up, I think, while Erin is getting the giveaway winner drawn. You're so welcome, you guys. I love teaching, and I love stamping, and I love crafting. So it's always such an honor when I get to teach you guys. Congrats, Nicole. Awesome. So Nicole, you are the very lucky winner of a Citrus Twist exclusive stamp set. Make sure you, I thought I put that email address somewhere here. Oh dear. Make sure you email at citrustwistlifecrafted@gmail.com to claim your prize. Again, thank you everyone so much for watching. I had such a blast teaching you guys all about stamping, and congrats again to Nicole. All right, bye everyone.